Yeah. So,
Yes.
Soumik, you can continue.
Right. Thanks, Kaushal. Hi, everyone. Hope you are doing well. And this topic that we're trying to cover is based on angel tax. Yes, lot of discussion happened, but there are several queries that are still left. On a rough basis, we get roughly 4 to 5 questions every week on angel tax. So we thought of culminating everything in one presentation, wherein we would discuss the different varieties and different questions related to angel tax and how to get around the fact. So in this particular presentation, we will try to cover what is it, angel tax, why it was brought in the first place, what was the intention behind it, when and exactly how it is applicable, and what is the way around, what are the exceptions to this rule. Uh, Also, if you do not follow the proper guidelines, what can be the penal complications and penal consequences for non-compliance? And is there any angel tax related to FDI in India, right? So this all these questions will be answered one by one in this webinar, and we would happy to take questions after we finish in that presentation, right? So my colleague Kaushal and I would be trying to help and answer these questions over the next 30 minutes, and one by one we will proceed accordingly, right? So before we start any further, let's first understand what is angel tax, right? So angel tax refers to the tax payable by an unlisted Indian company on any capital raised via issuance of securities on a premium value. Now, this should be very much important. The three things that I've said: one, capital raising of capital; B, a premium value; C, unlisted Indian companies; and D, Indian angel investor. So any excess realization is considered as taxed as income and taxed accordingly, right? So four important things I'm just again saying. The money should be raised by an Indian unlisted company. It should be on a premium. It should be by an Indian angel investor, and four, it should be by issuance of shares or securities, right? On all the meeting of all the 4 points, only then angel tax is applicable. If any of these 4 points are not met, then angel tax is not applicable. Now, it should be understood the thesis of Indian angel investment is that a startup is valued at a premium from day one whenever they are raising money. So even if in idea stage you will find startups being valued at 5 CR, 6 CR. So any time an Indian angel investor invest in this Indian startup, they are they are bound to happen in the angel tax might be applicable over here. Of course, there are exemptions which we will discuss further. The angel tax can be also explained through an example. If you see over here, currently the corporate tax rate is around 25%, and plus some surcharge will take it around 26%, right? So say for example, if a startup receives 50 CR as investment for 1 lakh shares, you issue 1 lakh shares of 5,000 each and you raise 50 CR. This Indian investors, Indian say HNI investor has invested 50 CR, right? And it is above the fair market value of the company. The fair market value is calculated through a valuation report by a merchant banker. So say a fair market value is around 2,000 rupees per share with 20 CR valuation. So anything that is raised above that will be taxed. So a 30 CR value, a 30 CR in this case might be taxed, right? And a tax on 30 CR is 7.8 CR. What it means is that if you raise 50 CR, right, from an angel investors and you dilute say a 20% of your stake or 30% of your company, right? but you have to pay 7.8 CR to the income tax department if it's over and above the fair market value. And over here, the problem arises. Now, if you say a 7.8 CR is not a small amount, anything above the fair market value will be taxed at a 26% rate. So over here, we need to understand why it is getting taxed and how it is been applicable. And over here, I think Kaushal can lead the discussion about the income tax provision industry.
Yeah,
Kaushal?
yeah, thank you so much. So as you rightly said, let's say a startup raises a capital of 50 CR, and if the provisions are not complied, so a startup has to pay around 7 to 8 CR on the provision of taxation to the income tax authorities. So a huge amount of funds which has been raised will be paid to the authorities at the initiation of the funds. So how we can help to curb these angel taxes, and what the section exactly says, how can the clause of income tax, that is the section 56 of the income tax, subsection 2 clause A, where it states what is angel tax, and how we can comply with the provisions of the tax, so it is not chargeable to tax and the startups can use the full amount of funds they have raised. So what this 56 section of the income tax act states, is where a closely held company issues its share at a price which is more than its fair market value, then the amount received in excess of the fair value will be chargeable to tax in the hands of the company. And this section has been introduced with effect from assessment year 13-14. So exactly it states that when a company in which public is not substantially interested uh, raises any funds in the previous year from any person being a resident, that means a resident investor, and the funds or the considerations or the shares are issued exceeding the fair market value, then the consideration in excess of the fair market value shall be chargeable to tax. However, the section 56 states it will not be chargeable to tax provided certain conditions are fulfilled. So if we look at the conditions, so the first condition is it will not be chargeable to tax when when the consideration has been received by a venture capital undertaking from a venture capital company or a venture capital fund. And the second is the classes of companies as notified by the government. So the challenge is who are the venture capital or who are the venture capital undertaking funds, or what funds are classified as venture capital funds. So that we will see in detail in our upcoming slides. But before going ahead, there is an explanation attached to the above section. So which states for this purpose, the fair market value, how to define the fair market value or what will be the fair market value. So the fair market value may be determined as per the methods prescribed. So methods can be the DCF method or any other method. And the second thing, uh, the company to the satisfaction of the officer based on the date of the issue of shares states yes, this is the fair market value, and we have to satisfy to the assessing officer about the calculations of the fair market value and how our fair market value has been arrived. And that will be considered as a fair market value for the purpose of calculations. So our question is who are the venture capital or what is venture capital fund? So that we will take ahead, but in continuation with this clause, there is one more clause. So it states the venture capital company or the fund shall be the undertaking as provided in the explanation of section 10. And the second is the fair market value shall be the fair market value as prescribed as per the calculations of 11 UA as per the satisfaction to the assessing officer. And as we state, it can be used by the formula of DCF or any other value. And the startup or the entity which has raised the fund may get a certificate from the merchant banker for this valuation of the fair market value. So the next question is, who are the
just to add on, Kaushal, and if you right. So in this particular thing, we must all understand a particular point that what Kaushal has mentioned, which is very important. This valuation has to be done by a certified merchant banker. So what happens and what we see many a times is that startups make a valuation through a registered valuer as per Companies Act 2013, but doesn't make a valuation report from get a valuation report from a merchant banker. Of course, startups who are not registered under the IPT, I'm talking about that startup. So if you are not registered under, you are not get a valuation certificate from a merchant banker, just a valuation report from a registered valuer, it won't be acceptable in the eyes of income tax department. So you see, no one barring a merchant banker can provide a valuation report to an unlisted company, which will give the exemption to the concerned startup about from the angel tax department. So even if you take forward a registered valuer's valuation report, the assessing officer is very much under his jurisdiction of not to accept it. So we must make sure that we must get a merchant banker's valuation report in case we are not a registered startup.
Yes, Soumik, very rightly said. In case of an unlisted company, unlisted private company, for the purpose of valuation and to determine the fair value of the shares, the company needs to get a certificate from a merchant banker to prove to the assessing officer the fair market value of the shares or the at the price which the company had issued the shares to the investors. So to take forward, the second is, as we discussed, what are the venture capital funds or what is the AIF? So what is this kind of funds and in which categories of funds these are allowed to be invested and who can apply in these funds and where these funds can be used. So Soumik will be guiding us over the AIF category of funds. Over
right. Thanks. Thanks, Kaushal. So just to understand and just to put context over here, why we are discussing AIF right now is because as per the income tax definition, if an AIF invests and not an angel investor, there are exemptions, right? So if you see, there are three major categories of AIF as per SEBI guidelines. Okay, category 1 AIF, category 2 AIF, and category 3 AIF. So category 1 AIF are essentially the venture capital firm and the VCs of the world. You talk about any micro VCs or mid-sized VCs, it will be registered under category 1 AIF. The social venture funds, the SME funds are all registered under category 1 AIF. Category 2 AIF are private equity funds. So if you say a family office or private equity players and not essentially a VC, those are registered under category 2 AIF, right? And category 3 AIF are hedge funds, right? So if you see the exemption notification of SEBI and everything is related to category 1 and category 2 AIF. So in case an AIF invests in the startups will be not, it's exempted from angel tax definition, right? So this is a brief overview of AIF and its role in angel tax definition. Kaushal, you can put in the next slide.
Sure. So next is the exemptions to the startup. So there is a notification dated 19th of February 2019, and that notification is very, very important, which has changed the criteria for the startup, how a startup can be recognized, or there are certain increase in the limits of the startups in terms of investment or in terms of business and all. So Soumik will be dealing with
it. Right. So if you see, when the Startup India and exemption of angel tax came into the picture, there were quite a few questions. Just to put perspective and why it is important, not every startups are recognized by the ITP registered startup. So, say for example, when we say a startup, this is a startup, but it's not under DIPP registered, it won't be treated as a startup. So even and if you see over here, the exemption notification of investment in startup, it says a turnover limit. So if a turnover limit has crossed 100 CR, previously it was 25 CR, now it has crossed 100 CR. If you cross that turnover limit, you go from an exemption, because the government acknowledges one basic fact, and the fact is this 100, once you cross 100 CR, is way beyond the valuation will be approximately, to be very fair, over 1,000 or 2,000 rupees CR valuation. At that valuation, in all probability, no Indian investors will invest in the company. Only VCs and private equity players will invest, and in that case, in any which way, the exemption notification is there, right? So that is the reason, that is the rationale behind taking out the turnover limit. So, say for example, when we say Zomato, a startup has registered, has come to an IPO, we necessarily mean a startup on practical sense, but on legal parlance, it is not a startup because it's not under the IPP registration, and it is not. The turnover limits have already been crossed. Point number one. Point number two. One more important thing that they have given is that the 10-year exemption. So basically, previously it was 7 years and only for 10 years for biotech startup. Now it's applicable to all, wherein for the first 10 years, you are recognized as a startup, but post that, your exemption or startup India stuff will fail, right? I mean, you are no way registered under startup. Okay, so you have a period of 10 years that the government will help you in any which way. The benefits of startup India will be explained by Kaushal in after a couple of slides. But there are ample amount of benefits wherein the government, the idea and the rationale of the government is let us nurture the newly incorporated company, the entrepreneurs, give them benefits. And once these benefits are given over a period of 10 years, then you are good enough to go, right? And all these startups are tech startups talking to innovation, wealth creation. So if your company, not all newly incorporated companies are startups, companies which are into tech, innovation, generating wealth and employment are given priority while while approving the application, right? So that's point one. Point two is the aggregate paid up capital. So it should be understand that the paid up capital aggregation have changed. So if your paid up capital is over 20, is less than 25 CR, and it doesn't include the VC investment, the AIF investment, nor a listed company investment, nor a non-resident investment. So in all these three cases, even if they invest, you can go beyond 25 CR. But if you do not invest, it's much lesser than 25 CR. Till then, you are applicable to apply for exemption notification dated 19 February 2019. So essentially, in our experience of working with several funded startups where we deal in their due diligence and regulatory filings and essentials and FEMA compliances, over there we hardly find this paid up capital to be big simply because this 25 CR is a quite high amount when you raise capital at a premium, right? So government have given quite a large uh, growth or leeway to the startup to raise funds, right? Previously, there were certain conditions. Uh, the conditions were the average return income of INR 25 lakh or more preceding three financial year. The angel investor should have a net worth of 2 CR or more. But then on notification dated 19 February, all this thing has been taken out of. So you do not have any conditions. It's just the government want to have a red carpet rule for the angel investors to invest. Previously, you had to obtain a merchant banker report, but now that condition has also been deviated. So, DPIIT registered startups can be there, and there are certain investment restrictions, right?
Yes, sir. So very rightly said. Ki after this notification, the two major changes which has came into picture is earlier if a unlisted private company wishes to raise the funds and it is exceeding the fair market value, or it wants to issue the share at a fair market value. So the private limited company so mandatorily needs to take a valuation report from a merchant banker. But now with this notification, if even if you are a listed private limited company, however, you are recognized as a DP, as a startup by a DPIIT. So there is no requirement to take a valuation report from a merchant banker. So this is one major change which has been brought in by this notification. And the second is the aggregate capital limit. So that, as Tomik mentioned, see, INR 25 CR is not a low amount. So earlier, the unlisted companies which raises the funds, so they have a hurdle to raise the capital along with the premium only up to 10 CR. But now with this notification, the limit has put up to 25 CR. And accordingly, while calculating this limit, if there is an investment from a VC funds or the non-resident, so that will not come into picture. So these are the two major changes which has been stated in the notification. And apart from this, it also states certain investment restrictions. So Swamik will be taking over those questions.
Okay. So right. So if you see, and just to have a brief understanding, as per the notification that the on 19th 2019, the notification that came in, which said that there are particular investors. Okay, fine. So if you okay, Kaushal, can you hear me properly?
Yes, Swamik, now it is fine. You can continue.
Right. Okay, Mr. Okay. So, Kaushal, whenever you speak, we should have a clarity, I guess. Coming to the points, right? There are so what it means is that this when this exemption notification came into picture on 2019, there are certain things that the the government wants the startup not to invest at, right? So in all these 7 or 8 points that this government doesn't want you to invest. So say for example, if you you use the startup in their benefit and then buy shares or securities, or you buy a motor vehicle or leasing, which is not in the ordinary course of business, right? Or say for example, you get hold of jewelry, uh, which is not in again not in the other ordinary course of business. So the government want you to invest in hardcore tech stuff, in hardcore in your working capital requirement, in your in growing your business, not to get this benefit to buy on your assets or take loans and advances, but to essentially grow the business. So, in case you are investing in this stuff, then you won't be able to get the benefits of the income tax exemption, right? So, Kaushal, if you can go to the next slide. Right. For tax exemption, there are various benefits, and what are the eligibility criteria of Startup India? So, Kaushal, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I will take it. Yeah. So basically, the Startup India is a scheme launched by the Indian government where it provides an initiative in form of tax exemption under Section 80 IAC, and there are numerous benefits if an entity or a unlisted private company registered under a Startup India scheme, and accordingly it can claim the following exemptions. So the basically criteria for applying the 80 IAC exemptions is the entity should be the DPIIT recognized startup. So the very first criteria is you have to be recognized as a startup by the DPIIT. So then only these section exemptions are available. And the second is only a private limited or a LLP are eligible for this kind of exemptions. And the third is the startup should have been incorporated on or after April 2016, and now this limits has been extended. Like earlier it is ki startups should has been incorporated on or after 1st April 2016 and up till 2019 only, but now it has been extended. So a startup has to be incorporated. And the fourth one is the startup is engaged in the field of innovation, development and improvements, which have a potential to generate employment and wealth creation in the country. So these are the four basic eligibility criteria to applying for the 80 IAC deduction. And furthermore, there are certain restrictions on this 80 IAC deduction which will not be available. So the first one is the entity so formed. The new entity should not be a reconstituted or a demerged entity from the existing entity. So if the entity is of likewise, it will not be considered as a startup and the exemptions cannot be availed. And the second, in case the entity ceases meet the following condition, as Somik mentioned earlier, ki if it has completed the 10-year from the date of incorporation or registration and the turnover has achieved 100 CR, so it will not be considered as eligible for claiming the exemptions under 80 IAC. So moving forward, also there what are the benefits for claiming once an entity registered under 80 IAC, what are the benefits it can claim? So the first of all, the major benefit is that there will be a 3-year income tax exemption if the entity has been recognized from the IBM. If IMB recognized it and give a certification of the exemption, so there will be 3 years exemption from the income tax. So this is a very, very good thing. If an startup gets a DPIIT registration and eligible for 80 IAC deduction, so the startup can claim the exemption of 3 tax years. The second is there will the tax exemptions will be there on the capital gain and investments which has been raised above the fair market value. That is, the if we raise a capital through the angel tax and it is a registered startup, so there is no need to take the valuations from the MB, and at the same time there will be tax exemptions. And also when a startup as a startup you have to do the compliance with related to many of the labor and the environmental laws. So once you are registered under 80 IAC and claiming the benefits, so there can be 9 labor laws and the environmental laws which as a startup you can self-certify and you can state the compliance. Also, while filing the patent rights and the applications, the startups get benefit in compared to the normal registered entities at that for filing fees. Also, the startups will be have access to the funds which has been maintained by the SEBI for the purpose. And one major thing, if the startup is in the field where the government tenders are allowed. So earlier there is a criteria, if any entity wishes to apply for a government tenders, so there is certain conditions which has to be fulfilled. But a startup can also can also apply for a government tenders, and there is no prior experience or turnover criteria needs to be met. And the one major benefit is, while in case the startup wishes to go for a winding up, so within 90 days is smart and fast procedure, the startup can proceed the application. So this is the benefits the startup can claim while availing the 80 IAC benefits. And apart from this, one major thing is, not only the 80 IAC or DPIIT, if you are recognized as a startup under DPIIT and claiming the exemptions, then you have to file one form, that is form 56. So this is a declaration by the startups which has to be given under section 56 to 7b, and this is a general form where we have to fill certain minimal details of the startup, and it can be submitted online, and accordingly the exemptions can be claimed.
Right. So, Kaushal, one more point for our listeners. The, if you see the entire end-to-end startup India process, there are three important things. One, you get registered under DPIIT, then you are called as a registered startup, right? It's under 80 IAC. Next point is, if you want to get an exemption for from injury tax, as Kaushal has pointed out, and there is a particular form under section 56 that has to be submitted to the government. Once that is done, you can also apply for a interministerial board exemption for income tax. So just to put perspective, all the three things are after one another. It's not that if you're a registered startup, you will get an income tax exemption or a section 56 exemption. For each and every point, you have to apply to the government agencies. So once that is done, then you will get it. So for ideally, if you want to get exempted from angel tax or any sort of a tax related to angel investment, you have to definitely registered under DPIIT and then apply for 56. In my opinion, and having worked with several of these investment and fundraising activities, once you get a DPIIT certificate, and if you are raising funds under section 56, then you would definitely, in all probability, get an exemption, right? So it's not a very complicated process. You have to just apply to the ministry if you get a DPIIT certificate, that you have received a DPIIT certificate. Now you wish to apply to section 56 exemption, right? So Kaushal, you can take it further from the next slides. Yeah. So guys, now just to understand again, what are the penal consequences of not following it, right? So what will happen if income tax will be applicable, right? So in that scenario, we have to understand the conditions. The condition is quite simple. If you are not following the provisions or you are not getting yourself exempted under injury tax, the entire money will be deemed to be income and chargeable under income tax. The assessing officer, and this is very important to understand, it doesn't mean you so once you make the tax filing, is done and dusted. I have seen in cases that the investment took place in the year 2019, right? And we got a notice in the year 2021. Okay, so a period of 2 years can also elapse from the date of fundraise and date of indirect tax applicability, and then you have to have that conditions imposed, and judge how to take necessary step forward. We have dealt in quite and several of these cases where our clients have received income tax exemption, but with prudence and judgment, we have been able to defend the cases in all these issues. And just to put perspective over here, please understand that the best way forward is to have a Startup India registration done. Once you are getting a Startup India registration and under Section 56 registration, no assessing officers can put you can apply injury tax onto you. So that's a huge advantage you get. Of course, if you raise from VCs, then applicability will reduce. If you raise foreign fund, applicability will reduce. But this is by and large the main crux point.
Yes, Somik. So very rightly said, कि the penal consequences can be very high in terms of the taxation, and at the same time, it is not very clear कि you at the year when you raises a fund, you will receive notice in the same year. Even after years, you can receive the notice of this angel tax, and then you if if there are loopholes and if the conditions are not fulfilled, so you have to pay the tax to the authorities. So that is the very huge risk which is there, but yes, the risk can be mitigated by taking a DPIIT Startup India registration and the Section 56, claiming the exemption of the Section 56. So these are the few ways which the startup can raise a fund and can apply for exemption, and there will be minimal tax implications. So moving forward, yes, we received a lot of questions, but yes, we have selected a few of the questions which are a very good questions, and we will be answering on these questions.
Right, Kaushal. So, guys, what has happened is that in the last few uh, days, wherein we have opened the discussion and where people has come in written to us queries, we have got several of the questions, right? And in most of the things that we have already tried to address in the slides, but some are very critical and quite interesting indeed, wherein we would now try to address them one by one. Okay, the first and major questions that we get is angel tax connected with foreign direct investment in startups? So say for example, you raise a fund from a foreign VC or a foreign angels, right? It might be your friends investing in your startup. So many a times I have seen, and to be honest, I'm dealing with almost 7 startups currently who are raising funds from their foreign friends, right? HNI friends. So the question is, will angel tax be connected on foreign direct investment, right? The answer to that is no. So even if you're not a DPIIT startup, the angel tax will not be applicable. If you see the law clearly, the law specifically says that the angel tax is applicable for Indian resident angel investors. Once the Indian resident angel investors invest in an Indian company at a premium value, only then this thing will be applicable. But for FDI reason, it won't be applicable in case of foreign VCs invest in Indian startup, right? So this is point number one, and I think I have been able to answer that. If you raise an FDI from a foreign investor, angel tax will not be applicable. Okay. Let's come to the next point. Is angel tax applicable on grants received? Kaushal, do you wish to answer that?
Yes, Somik. Before going with the grant, so there is one more thing. Like if you are a startup and you have raised the FDI, so there are other compliances with respect to RBI also that you need to be fulfilled, and there are certain other declarations which on an annual basis the registered startup or the listed public company needs to be filed with the RBI or the MCA to comply with. So these are the things. And the second question, as you Somik raised, So we have received regarding the grants. So will angel tax be applicable on the grants received? So let's say a startup which has been recognized under the DPIIT and have a certification, and they have received the grants. So the grants are something which are not dealt in this angel tax. Basically the certification and the law states ki if the funds are received from an Indian investor and it is not the grants which are received. So these things are completely different, and the taxes applicable will be in the general terms. And even if the startup or the company has an exemption, so it will not affect, because the grants are something different and the taxation will be guided by different laws. So the angel tax applicable on grants, it is not applicable on the grants are something different. And Somik, so moving forward, third question we have is when to apply for Startup India exemptions and how to avail the exemptions. So what is the exact process or the timeline? So can you take it forward?
Right. Sure. So again, this question is very important. You see, when to apply for a Startup India, the law never says anything in this regard, right? So there is no specific guideline saying that this is how the angel tax have to be applied, right? So you do not know exactly when you have to apply. Our preference is always applying for angel tax exemption and DPIIT exemption right from day one. This would help us to get the benefit from day one itself, which is very, very important, right? So just again to understand this, if you apply, say, after 2 years from date of incorporation, the validity will start from the date of incorporation and end on 10 years. So it doesn't mean from day one, you will, the day when you apply, you will get an exemption. Is again retrospective from the day when the incorporation has happened. In terms of angel tax exemption, we must also understand the angel tax exemption is based on the under section 56 exemption notification. So it's always advisable to apply for section 56 exemption once before the initiation of the process. But in our experience, we have seen application post initiation of the investment, or at least 1 year post funding of the round. Then also we can apply for angel tax and the government gives the benefit. Our advice is to avoid the confusion, apply for angel tax, apply for DPIIT, apply for interministerial tax exemption right from day one itself. But it is doable post 1 or 2 years from the date of incorporation, right? So this is a perspective that has to be taken care of. Now, the important question is, what should you do once you receive angel tax exemption, angel tax notice from the income tax department? Caution, can you take it?
Yes, Samik, thank you. So yeah, this this is an interesting case, and recently we have faced this. So one of the clients which we are associated with, so they have recently received a notice sometime back regarding the demand notice from the income tax stating the angel tax. They have to pay the angel tax because they have raised so and so million of funding, and accordingly the taxes are applicable to them. But the thing is, we can respond to this kind of demand notices. And in our case, the startup is already registered with the DPIIT certification and has a section 56 exemption. So we have to respond to the officer's notice. We have to visit them and explain about the funding process, the valuation process exactly, ki why we are stating so and so valuations, and these valuations are the fair market valuations, and thus by giving the proper response and with the applicable reports or the certifications or the response, yes, the notices can be dealt with, and the entities which raise the funds, they will not required to pay the taxes. But yes, the notices can be received even if you are a registered DPIIT startup. The notices can be received, but yes, it's partly the notices can be tackled.
Right. So what Kaushal is saying is very important. You see, just because you have got an income tax exemption, it doesn't mean that you cannot receive the income tax notice. You can definitely get, anybody can get an income tax notice. It's just when you receive an income tax notice, you have a definite and clear ground of defending it, right? So say for example, after one hearing or two hearing, you will get an easy exemption. But if you do not get exemption notice under section 56, then in all probability, it will be very tough for you to defend. But of course, there are ways to defend this, including justifying the valuation and putting a value or a merchandise report up front. But to avoid all confusion, again, as I have always said, go for Startup India registration right from day one, right? Now, this brings me to a very important and pertinent question. Will Startup India exemption applicable on foreign subsidiaries that are promoted by Indian entrepreneurs, right? Now, to answer this question, we must understand a basic prefix, right? Why this question is coming and what does the law say? The question is very important is because many a times when angels or say for example on companies raise Indian entrepreneurs raises fund, the investors prefer a Singapore holding company or a US holding company to invest at, right? So the Indian holding company will be the Indian company will be the subsidiary of either the US holding company or the Singapore holding company. We have done several such models wherein we have helped companies to have this Singapore entity formed or the US entity formed, and underneath this are subsidiary of Indian entities are done. The subsidiary will essentially be the back office of the Singapore or the US entity. The Singapore entity raises funds, like say for example a Flipkart, right? They raise funds in Singapore and then they repatriate the funds back in India. So the question over here is, does it necessarily can it be registered under Startup India? Now, if you see the Startup India manual, the manual clearly says that in case you are a subsidiary, irrespective of the fact you are an Indian subsidiary or a foreign subsidiary, you are not eligible for a Startup India exemption. So you cannot be registered under Startup India if you are a subsidiary. Second, and let's understand the practicability, right? These funds will be invested by holding companies to India. Does that so? So what happens? The holding company raises funds and then repatriates the funds back to India to various models of financing. So does it require the Startup India benefit? In all probability, no. Probably in some they might lose the label of compliances benefit or a benefit in regards to IP rights, right? The reduced cost in IP. All these benefits they might get reduced, but essentially income tax will not be applicable because at the end of the day, the entire fund is being flowed back by the holding company, and in that holding company, you have a foreign holding company. So, in as in question one we discussed, the FDI is not applicable, right? So FDI investment is not applicable under income tax. So in all probability, you need not require. However, there are a couple of exemptions which I have personally dealt in the last 2 or 3 months. You see, for any investment by a VC, right? You require a VC, Indian VC investing in a foreign holding company requires two important things. One, a SEBI permission. B, it must have a direct connect in India. Now, many a time SEBI takes time of approval or might not give the approval. So what happens is that the investor invests in the Indian company, and the Indian company through a call and put option gives shares in the Singapore or the US entity. Now this is very complicated stuff which might be discussed in a different webinar, that how flipping and all this externalization happens. Over here we must keep in mind two important things. One, when this sort of a thing that happen, is very important to have a merchant banker certificate, just in case the investment takes place, just to be have a safeguard perspective. And B, that valuation or the merchant banker certificate must be held along with a proper valuation mechanism and based on proper financial prudence, right? Once that is done, I think then you are in a very, very safe position of getting away of any complexities of income tax.
Yes, Somik. So very, very correct. As you mentioned, ki I think we will require one more, another session for this call and put kind of options and the way these entities or the restructurings are done, raising the funds in the Singapore or the US and then transferring the funds and using the call and put options and the valuations report. So that is where the challenge comes into, and that is what is professional and technical in nature. So that is the thing we have to take care of to avoid this kind of taxations, and that's all.
Right, right. I think we have covered all the major questions that have been asked by us before the webinar. So in case if you have any other questions, happy to answer them. I think we have already got one particular question which says, what will happen if I get a exemption notification and still get a notice from income tax department? So the answer to that is what Kaushal has even said, right? It doesn't mean that because you have got an exemption notification or you have been registered under DPIIT and been registered under 56 exemption, you will not get a notice. Once the notice can be received by anybody and everybody, but it's important to the way we defend the case in front of the assessing officer. Because we have a DPIIT certificate, we have a 56 certificate, is very, very good case, and in all likelihood, after one or two during or see on that matter, one or two written submission, uh, the assessing officer will give us the benefit and the leeway and take back the notice altogether. So this is of high prudence. One more question that we have received is that whether an Indian subsidiary can they be registered under Startup India? You see, just to again put perspective, the law says clearly, the regulation as of now says clearly, the DPIIT exemption can only be given, or DPIIT benefit for that matter under APIIT can only be given to Startup India eligible companies, and in that eligible guidelines, some is not allowed right now. So as of now, you cannot cannot get these exemptions from the authorities, right? So that is the second question that is to be answered. Kaushal, have you got any further questions?
No, I think there is one, but I have answered that.
Okay, great. I think we have covered all the points. If you have any further questions, just like to us at info@taxmother.com. Happy to take them and answer them on a one-to-one basis, and we can take it from there on. So, guys, we appreciate each and every one of you joining us. It's been quite a informative presentation where we discussed the various facets of Startup India registration and various facets of income tax. If you have any query, as I said, just write to us. Happy to answer them. Till then, thank you guys, and we'll meet you soon.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining, and stay safe.
Yeah.
Bye bye. Thank you, Somik.